afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the first meeting of the rechartered 2023 through 2025 Nancy term. We welcome many of you back from the Nancy's last term, as well as those new council members who are joining us for the first time. Today, we look forward to an important presentation about the requirements of the Federal Advisory Committee Act and federal record keeping from the FCC's Office of General Counsel and the Office of the Managing Director. We also look forward to hearing updates from the Secure Telephone Identity Governance Authority, the North American Portability Management, LLC, and the Numbering Administration Oversight Working Group. Next, we welcome members of the public watching via live stream and encourage you to submit any questions to livequestions@fcc.gov. I will repeat that, livequestions@fcc.gov. Your questions will be read during the public participation portion of the meeting. Before we begin, I will review for council members some ground rules and best practices to ensure we have a smooth and successful meeting this afternoon. Please keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking. You may use the video function, but it's not required. If you have a question or would like to make a comment during designated discussion times, please use the raise hand feature. Both Christy and I will monitor this. Everyone manages their own raise hand feature, so please unclick once you no longer need it. When you are speaking, please identify yourself as we may not recognize your voice. And please remember to use mute when you are finished speaking. Does anyone have any questions before we proceed? Now for announcements. First, I want to mention Natalie McNamer of iConnective, who passed away suddenly in August. Some of you may have spoken to her in person at our last Nancy meeting on June 28th. Natalie worked on numbering issues for more than 20 years. Some of her jobs included numbering administrator for Primeco Personal Communications, senior manager of numbering policy at T-Mobile, and industry relations at iConnective. Natalie had a long history of contributions to numbering, including her work on the predecessor of the NAOWG, the CATA, and the interoperable video calling working groups of the Nancy and Addis Numbering Forum. We are deeply grateful for all of Natalie's contributions to the advancement of numbering issues throughout her career, and we offer our sincere condolences to Natalie's family, her coworkers, and her many friends in the numbering community. DFO Christy Schumann would also like to say a few words. Christy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Schumann. I am the designated federal officer of the Nancy, and I thank you all for joining us today. On behalf of the staff and the Nancy team, I'd like to offer our condolences to Natalie's family, and I'd like to recognize her many contributions to numbering over the years of her distinguished career. Chairwoman Charles.
Thank you, Christy. Next, Christy will conduct the roll call. If the members have any ethics disclosures to make to the group, please respond when called with your name to indicate that you are present, and then make the relevant disclosure at that time. Because it's the beginning of the charter, many members have disclosures to make, so please bear with us for the required ethics disclosures. Christy?
Okay, yes. If you have ethics disclosures, please be sure to make them at this time. And if there are any alternates who are also on the call, they may also make disclosures when I call for their representative organizations.
Thanks, Christy.
10X people. I got to go
Sorry
through
about
the
that.
list.
Go get absolutely.
No problem. 10X people.
This is Lisa Marie Maxon, no disclosures.
Hey, Christy, John Nakamura, no disclosures.
800 Response Information Services.
Hi, Heather Barrows, no disclosures. Thank you.
Ad hoc Telecommunications Users Committee.
Hi, Susan Gately, no disclosures, excuse me.
Alliance for Telecommunications Industry Solutions.
Jackie Weldman, Addis.
TNT. Do we have anybody on from AT&T? Okay, Bandwidth.
Greg Rogers, and I will disclose that I sit on the board of directors of Encompass and SIP Forum.
And Lisa Jill Freeman with Bandwidth, disclosing that I am Bandwidth's primary representative on the NAMPAM LLC.
Brightspeed.
Hello, this is Jeff Lanning, and I have no disclosures.
Charter.
Kathy Troughton, no disclosures.
Comcast.
This is Beth O'Donnell. I'm the second member, and I am a member of the STIGA board. Thank you.
Thompson Abasui, Comcast, no disclosure.
Competitive Carriers Association.
Hello, this is Angela Simpson, no disclosures.
DTIA.
Hi, Amy Bender, no disclosures.
Electronic Privacy Information Center.
Hey, Chris Fischella, no disclosures.
Google.
This is Tracy Hollick, no disclosures.
Compass.
Hi, this is Christopher Shipley from Encompass, no disclosures.
Lumen.
Good afternoon. This is Philip Lindsay with Lumen. I am a member of NAMPM. I am a board member for the SIP Forum. I am a chair for the non-IP call authentication task force with Addis. I am a board member on the STIGA, and I am on the board of the Telecommunications History Group.
Maine Public Utilities Commission.
This is Michael Johnson. I'm no disclosures, please.
National Association of Attorneys General.
Yes, this is Tracy Nayer with the North Carolina Department of Justice on behalf of NAG, and I have no disclosures. And I'm joined by Amanda Wentz with the Arizona Attorneys General, who serves as an alternate representative. So I'll leave to her to address if she has any disclosures.
Yes, this is Amanda Wentz with the Arkansas Attorney General's office, and no disclosures.
National Association of State Utility Consumer Advocates.
Good afternoon. This is Barrett Sheridan. I'm employed by the Pennsylvania Office of Consumer Advocate, and I'm representing NASUCA.
Mexico Public Regulation Commission.
Good afternoon. This is Brady Tollison, and no disclosures.
This is Mike Ripperger, the alternate, and no disclosures.
North Dakota Public Service Commission.
This is Victor Shuck, and no disclosures.
Geraldine Schmaltz with the Public Service Commission, no disclosures. NTCA.
This is Tamara Ray, the alternate to Brian Ford. I have no disclosures.
Peerless Network.
This is Patrick Phipps, no disclosures.
Public Service Commission of District of Columbia.
Hi, this is Lara Howley Wald with the DCPSC, and one disclosure, I'm the new chair of the NARUC Staff Subcommittee for Telecommunications.
Cinch Voice.
This is Allison Blevins, no disclosures.
SIP Forum.
This is Rich Shockey, no disclosures.
PS Telecommunications.
This is Paul Legedlo, no disclosures.
Telnix.
Hi, this is David Kasem. Telnix is an AMPA member and I serve as an alternate. I'm also on the Addis Board of Directors. Thank you.
T-Mobile.
Good afternoon. This is Rosemary Lice with T-Mobile. I serve as a member of the NAPM LLC. I am not an officer. Thank you.
US Telecom.
This is Josh Perkey, no disclosures.
Verizon.
Dana Crandall, no disclosures.
iConnective.
This is Chris Drake. I disclose that I'm on the Addis Board of Directors and Executive Committee, as well as chairing the Addis Tops Council. I further disclose that I'm on the advisory board for Pace University cybersecurity curriculum and on the advisory board of a cybersecurity startup.
And this is Kathy McMahon with iConnective, no disclosures.
Okay, thank you. Somos.
Florence Weber, no disclosures.
Okay, did I miss anyone or did anyone join late?
Yeah, this is Ola Oyefusi, AT&T. Not sure if you can hear me now.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, there was some technical issues. Just resolved. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Did you have any disclosures?
No, I had none.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well,
And
that
this is
concludes.
Rebecca Beaton with the Washington State Commission staff, no disclosures.
Anyone else that we missed or joined late?
Hi, Christy. It's Bridget Alexander White representing Highline.
Okay, yeah, Bridget, I'm sorry. I should have called on you. Do you have any disclosures?
No, thank you.
And Chairwoman Charles, do you have any disclosures?
I do not.
Okay, then I think that concludes the roll call.
To get started, download the Google Home.
I apologize. My Google Home device is going off.
Google Home is
Thanks,
present. Google Home is present. That concludes the roll call. I'll turn the meeting back to the chairwoman.
Thanks, Christy. As we begin a new chapter of the Nancy, it is a good time for us to review important requirements of the Federal Advisory Committee Act and federal record-keeping obligations. Doris Gamble from the Commission's Office of Managing Director and Paula Silberthal with the Commission's Office of General Counsel will now provide us with an overview. Doris and Paula, the meeting is now yours.
Thank you. I'm not going to take up too much of your time today. My name is Doris Gamble. I work on the records management team in the Office of the Managing Director. And I'm here today to go over some of your record-keeping responsibilities in accordance with the Federal Advisory Committee Act. So the National Archives and Records Administration oversees all federal agencies. And one of the things that they've done is they've created a general record schedule because all agencies will have some similar record types. And records under the Federal Advisory Committee Act are governed under the General Record Schedule 6.2. And so records are to be maintained in accordance with that schedule, and I will share an electronic copy of that along with a checklist that outlines all of the different types of documentation that are required for us to accession records to the National Archives in accordance with their retention policies. So just quickly, a couple things. The disposition schedule, the GRS, is media neutral, meaning it applies to all records, regardless of format. So paper, audiovisual, electronic records, etc. Typically these days, all records are electronic, which is great. We work closely with our audiovisual department, so they're aware of these requirements as well, and we coordinate with them to transfer these important meetings over to NARA at the appropriate time. So what does this mean to all of you? We try to keep it pretty simple. We do ask that all that you're required to do from a record keeping perspective is ensure that you as the DFO have a complete and accurate record of the documents that document the committee's deliberations and decisions. And so we're asking that the committee members, should you have any emails or deliberative information or documents, there is a Nancy box, email box that has been set up. And in coordination with Christy and, the IT folks, we make sure that those emails get rolled up and transferred to the National Archives at the end of their life cycle. Again, I'll give you a copy of the general record schedule. It lays out exactly which documents are considered records that are, relevant to the Nancy, and which ones need to be kept and which ones have a shorter retention period. We'll make sure to, again, give instructions as far as how to get these records from Nancy to the National Archives and Records Administration. We work closely with Deborah Klein, the CMO, to make sure that everyone has appropriate training as needed, and to make sure that the important work that you all are doing gets documented and preserved. It sounds pretty simple, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And Christy is a great point of contact as well, and is aware of these record keeping regulations and requirements. That's all I have for you all today. I'm going to turn it over to Paula.
Yeah, Paula, just before you get started, I think from the members' standpoint, the key thing for you all to take away is just to be sure to copy the Nancy inbox on anything substantive related to your activities with either the full Nancy or with any working groups you're on. And then we take it from there to take care of the record keeping requirements. Is that correct, Doris?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Christy.
Okay. Thank you very much. Paula, I think unless there are questions, are there any questions from members? I don't see any hands up.
I'm ready to go. Do we have my slides?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Okay. So we'll turn it over to Paula now, and
Hi,
she
everyone.
can go ahead.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I work with the Office of General Counsel, done BACA stuff for quite a while. Some of you may have seen parts of these slides, but there has been some new information added recently. So hang on there, and we'll try to go through these pretty quickly. This just gives you the context for what we're doing and how we're, what we're doing and why we're doing it. So the Federal Advisory Committee Act governs your operations unless there's a statutory exemption. And under FACA, we're required it's to promote openness in government, a diverse and balanced membership, and public accountability. Next slide. You'll find that although Christy will contact you far in advance of the meetings and works on setting everything up, we're required to provide 15 days calendar notice in the Federal Register, but we always provide public notices, releases, and other media postings so people can be aware of this, since not everyone reads the Federal Register, hopefully. And meetings include a wide variety of things, including teleconferences, video conferences, internet-based conferences, and just simple phone calls if you have more than a quorum of the members present on any of these devices. Next slide, please. So, someone has just said, if there's a presentation, it's not being displayed. Are people able to see this?
No, just
Yeah.
roll call.
This
I
is
can see-
Rosemary. I can see it. I think you have to you have to push the button that says sync to presenter slide on the bottom.
So, yes, so this is Christy. I'm seeing the presentation, but that may be because I'm internal.
Chris Drake here, not seeing anything but roll call.
This is
So-
Rebecca Beaton. I can see it.
Yep, Susan Gately, I can see it.
This is Jeff Lanning. I can see it, but the sync to presenter does not work on my presentation. I have to manually navigate forward.
Okay, well, I think the best path forward, we sent these slides out to all the members. So I think what we should do is just press ahead with Paula's description. And if you have the slides we sent you handy, you can take a look at them. But if not, you can look at them afterwards to, you'll have a summary there of everything she's talking about. I think
Just
that's probably.
Quick comment, Christine, if we pace through ourselves on that forward arrow, we can move the slides, those of us who don't get it moving. So we can see at the same time when she says change the slide.
Okay.
Just wanted to mention that.
I'm not sure exactly what the sync up problem here is, since some people are getting it and some people aren't. But I think I think our best course, and we'll talk to our staff internally about that before the next meeting. But for now, I think that's the best path forward. And you all do have these slides in your email that Rhonda sent, so you'll have them for reference if you don't get everything that Paula's saying. Okay. Go ahead, Paula.
Okay, so as most of you know, the FACA requires that all parent committee meetings of the full NANS be open to the public, and it permits submission of written statements to the committee subject to reasonable regulations. And members of the public may speak or address the committee if your committee guidelines permit that. Okay, next slide. This is something worth bearing in mind because it could conceivably affect Nancy. Okay, so there are limited circumstances where portions of the meetings could be closed with the approval of the agency head and with prior notice of this in the Federal Register. So this could apply to company trade secrets, to classified material, to national security matters related to foreign policy, and to various technical matters. So I only say in my ignorance that this could apply at certain points to the Nancy if you do anticipate getting into any discussions that might, border on, confidential, say, proprietary or technical materials applicable to the entities you represent. And also in terms of closing the meetings, we're not allowed to do that spontaneously, because at the last minute, someone realizes, this is confidential. So if you think, you got to think about that in advance, or else just bring that material up at another meeting where we could close part of the meeting. Again, this is just for the parent committee meetings. What I'm talking about now does not apply to the working groups. Okay, next slide. So just on housekeeping, we're required under the Act to keep minutes of meetings, short minutes of meetings in addition to any videotapes we might have. And we're also required to keep a record of the persons present at the meetings and the documents received, and all of those things go into the written minutes. And the minutes, any transcripts, any documents submitted, reports, studies, etc., are required to be available for public inspection when requested. unless for some reason withheld under applicable FOIA exemptions. And typically, as a matter of practice, not as a requirement, we post key documents on like on the Nancy website. Okay, next. As you know, having just made your disclosures, members have a continuing obligation to disclose any interest in or connections to persons or entities regulated by the commission, or persons or entities having interest in matters that may come before the committee and that may present a conflict of interest or even the appearance of a conflict of interest. And please note that if you have any changes in employment or representation while serving as a member, you need to promptly let Rhonda or Christy know. And similarly, if you have any concerns about things that might raise conflict issues, please, or even recusal issues, please get in touch with OGC Ethics. So you might still be representing the same people, but you've added, you're on additional boards, or you're doing something else on the, on the side that could create a conflict. Please just get in touch with OGC Ethics, and whoever first vetted you, or if you want to, you could get in touch with Christy or Rhonda, and they'll tell you who to get, who to reach out to. Okay, next slide. So the chair and vice chair play an important role in our PACAs because they are really a focal point for you, and these individuals provide input to us about the kinds of informal working groups that may be needed, possibly in addition to working groups that are set up at the very beginning. And as you've seen, also the chair or vice chair conduct your meetings. Okay, next slide. Your DFO, Christy, is responsible for calling the meetings, approving the agendas, attending the meetings, chairing the meetings, maintaining the committee records, and making sure that appropriate minutes are kept. Next slide. We can skip this one, and we can skip the next one because it's already been covered. Okay, informal working groups. These are sort of the do's and don'ts to keep in mind. You can gather information, except you can't use formal surveys because those require PRA approval. You can develop working plans. You're responsible for drafting reports, for discussing preliminary findings. The good news is that informal working groups can meet in closed sections. You can do that with the approval of the DFO pretty spontaneously. There's no need for public notice, and in fact, there cannot be public attendance. And the basic role of the working group is to make recommendations to the Nancy as a whole. Next slide. So what things can't the working groups do? They can't usurp the function of the parent advisory group. So, for example, you cannot make without going through the parent committee, you can't make direct recommendations to the commission. So essentially the process is the working groups come up with thoughts, ideas, reports. They make recommendations to the Nancy, and the Nancy would have to discuss those and then vote them up, down, or with exceptions. When the information comes from the working group to the full committee, they can't just be rubber stamped. They have to be acted on after a full discussion. And the reason is that the informal working groups cannot bind the committee. So there has to be another layer of action before the working group recommendations are implemented. And that's really important. Long ago, we had some instances where the working groups thought that their product was the final product, and that could lead to problems. So everything has to go through the full committee so that the full committee can reflect on it and, as I said, accept it, not accept it, or just change the recommendations. Okay, next slide. Please remember that you can't conduct surveys because since the Nancy and the working groups are in a sense an arm of the FCC, you, like us, are subject to the Paperwork Reduction Act, which limits, doing surveys. So you can't reach out to, I think it's more than 9 people for a survey. If there were something that you really wanted to do and you wanted to get input from, specific parts of the public, more than 9 people, then you should let the DFO know. And there are a couple things that could be done. One is you might have a survey, but you could break it up into different parts, and each part maybe would just be sent to fewer than 10 people. Alternatively, it might be possible to just ask some general questions, and the PRA experts could work with you. You could work through Christy or Rhonda, and you could post some general questions on your website, and that would be another alternative. But it's a little tricky. So the bottom line is, whenever you're thinking about something that could possibly involve a survey and reaching out to a number of people, please check in with Christy and Rhonda on that, and we'll give you some guidance. Okay, next slide. As I mentioned, informal working groups are not subject to the public notice and public participation requirements. And therefore, they don't have to be open to the public. Now, if for some reason you want to open up your meeting to the public, that's fine, but then you have to announce it in advance. You can't just sort of selectively say, we're having this meeting and we want these 4 people to attend who are members of the public. It's sort of, an all or nothing situation. On the other hand, I might get into this in a later slide. It is fine if you want a presentation by someone who's an expert. You can bring that expert or that representative of a company, whatever, into your meetings for the presentation and for questions and answers. But when that person has finished the presentation, if you're keeping it as a closed meeting, then that individual should leave and should not be there for the rest of the meeting. I don't think this will be a problem for you, but please remember that the number of people who can be in a working group have to be less than a quorum of the full committee. So what you could do, if you're interested, you're not on an informal committee, but you want to find out what's going on because you're interested or it pertains to something you're doing. As a member of the NANCE, you could attend another working group meeting where you're not a member, but you couldn't participate. That's sort of been what we've been doing that works pretty effectively. But if there are participating number of people who are more than a quorum, that converts the informal meeting into a full meeting of the NANCE. And if it hasn't been announced in advance and made open to the public, then there would be a FACA violation. Okay, next slide. Yeah, typically we treat the discussions at the working group meetings as confidential. And as I said before, you can attend meetings where you're not a member, but then you just need to be an observer. Okay, next slide. I already said this. If you want to have someone come in and give a presentation, that's fine, but then they have to leave. Next slide. The ex parte rules do apply to presentations made to a committee or its working group, or to presentation between working group members, committee members, and FCC staff or commissioners. But I believe that that Nancy has already issued a notice that treats these kinds of presentations as exempt. So,
Yes, Paula,
you know,
Paula,
yeah.
yeah, we already put out a public notice in September announcing that these proceedings would be exempt for the 2-year term.
Right. And so just what the public notice says is that if there are presentations that otherwise would have been considered ex parte, but they're allowed to go forward under the exemption, if there's something that's said that the agency wants at a later date to use for one of its rulemakings, committee staff will then put that presentation into the record of the relevant proceeding. So there are not going to be any private lobbying or private presentations that are relied on in a commission order. We will make sure that any such presentations get put on the record if they're going to be used. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay. Oh, and just to be clear, if the presentation that's being made is simply to represent the views of to present the views to the commissioner of the full committee or or of the working group, so you're not speaking in a sort of individual capacity, but you're representing the advisory committee, then those would not even fall under the rubric of an ex parte. Okay, next slide. Yeah, this has come up occasionally. People get asked to give a presentation to discuss what's going on at one of our advisory groups. It could be just at a trade meeting, or it could be something for a TV show where someone's considered an expert and they want to get someone from our advisory committee to talk about what's going on. What we would say is that when you're presenting the views, when you're talking about something that's already been voted, that's fine. But if you then venture into your views of whatever the topic is, and it's not something that's the committee view, it's just your own individual view or your company's view, whatever, then when you're giving those interviews or you're making those speeches, or it could be submitting an editorial opinion, please be sure to differentiate between your individual views and those of the committee. And this has happened sort of accidentally a couple times, where someone actually did like an op-ed piece and it was all their individual views, nothing had been voted. They actually had some different views than most of the committee members, and then they signed it, Joe Smith, head of X, Y, and Z working group. And what happened was that there was feedback on that because people were thinking that these were the views of the working group or of the advisory committee, when it was really only the views of that individual. So it's important to keep that in mind if you're making any public presentations sort of on these topics and identifying yourself as a member of the NANCE or chairperson of the NANCE or whatever. Okay, next slide. Got covered that. Next slide. Yeah, so if you do get invited or to give a presentation on Nancy Matters, or if you do plan to, give an op-ed or something like that, you might want to touch bases in advance with Christy or Rhonda, just to make sure that you frame the presentation in a way that distinguishes between your own policy views versus a stated position of the full committee. Okay, next slide. I think this is probably the last slide, but just remember that if you're not going to be employed at some point by the entity that you're representing and were vetted for, please just get in touch with the DFO so that either you could be reappointed when you change positions to represent your new employer, and also that gives time if your former employer wants to continue, that gives that entity time to suggest a different person once you leave that agency. I think that's it. Oh, do we have any other slides? Nope. Anyone have any questions? Okay, thanks very much for hearing this. And if you do have any questions about things that fall into the FACA legal category, please let Christy or Rhonda know, and they'll get in touch with me. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Doris, and thank you, Paula. And Paula, as chair, let me apologize that we had some technical issues with your slides. I know that members of the committee will take a look. For those that had issues, we'll take a look at the slides that were emailed to them before the meeting started. But again, thank you for your presentation, both of you. We appreciate you for joining us this afternoon and for your insights into these important rules and best practices. So next, we'll hear from Brent Struthers, Director of the Secure Telephone Identify Governance Authority. Brent, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Charles, and I'd like to thank you all for asking the GA to come in and provide another update. And I am absolutely one of the computer Luddites whose computer is not following along with the presentation. So I won't know if you're advancing the slides. I'm just going to hope you're going to the second slide with the chart on it, please. You can see that we have 1,250 service providers as of, well, actually still the same as of today. Growth has definitely slowed after the last FCC mandate in June. We still have 14 authorized STICAs that are assigning certificates to all the authorized providers and REST-ports. So let's go to the next slide, please, where most of the presentation is. Certificate policy version 1.4. If you remember, we passed or adopted a new certificate policy version 1.4 in June. And the technical committee and the PMA, which is the Policy Management Authority, which is actually a little separate entity, headed by a member of the PA. So, sorry, lots of acronyms here. Is in the process of reviewing all these certification practice statements for those 14 STICAs. Those are about 40, 50-page documents that say how those CAs will assign certificates in compliance with the certificate policy. So all those have to be updated when we update the certificate policy, and then they have to be reviewed and checked for compliance of their own. So when they come out, when these CPSs are approved, these will be the first iteration of the CPSs that may include the signing of the STIGA recognized passport extensions, meaning rich call data, resource priority header, and div or diversion. So you'll see those coming up. I noticed there's a mistake in the next one, but you'll see those coming up when they get approved. We should have some of those starting to get approved in the next probably month or so. So let's, the STIPS system changes. We have a new change order coming up. I spoke in detail about the changes in my June update. So what I really want to focus is primarily on one change that seems to have caused a little bit of confusion. So there's three changes again. One is we're changing the maximum. I don't know why there's a D in maximum. It generally doesn't go in there, but I must have decided it needed a D today. So we changed the maximum SPC token lifetime to 2 weeks. We've got a change in the root certificate for the non-production environment, meaning the testing system or staging system. And then we've got a certificate revocation list, a difference in the way of how that treats expired certificates that are on it. So the change that seems to be causing some confusion, it hasn't happened yet, but we did send out a notice, is the maximum SBC token lifetime, the 2-week maximum on SBC token lifetimes. What I want to assure people, and a notice went out on this one, is that the maximum lifetime of 2 weeks applies to the SBC token. The SBC token is what a provider gets from the policy administrator, and they then take to a CA to get a certificate with which they sign their calls. So the token is not what you use to sign your calls. The token is only what you take from the policy administrator to the CA to get the certificate that you use to sign calls. If a provider has a valid unexpired certificate, the one they're using to sign their calls, they can continue to sign calls regardless of whether or not their SBC token is expired. The only time they really need to get a new SBC token is, let's say they want to get a new certificate or their certificate has expired, then they can go get a new SBC token from the PA. It doesn't cost anything. It's a very quick process. They get an updated SBC token, they take it to the CA and they can get a new certificate. But as long as their certificate's valid and not expired, they don't need a new SBC token every couple of weeks. So hopefully that will clear that up a little bit. We're hoping to have the testing done this week on the change order, and it may be rolled out as early as late this week. On the funding framework, we've made a bunch of progress there. The GA and PA, as we always say, are funded with a fair share sliding scale approach. We leverage what's called a contribution factor, so we're not overly burdening any particular participant or industry segment. That said, the budget to fund the Shaken framework for 2024 is the same as 2023. So you would expect that the contribution factor would go down a little bit because we've had more providers come into the ecosystem, and you would be correct in that. So the contribution factor for 2024 is 0.00002722. That's the number we multiply by your telecom revenues on the 499A data that you give to the policy administrator, and that's how we determine your fee for 2024. Now that's down from 0.00003574 in 2023. That doesn't start applying until next year or for the payments that are due for 2024. If a provider registers yet in 2023, they're going to use that 2023 contribution factor. All that stuff's up on our STIGA website. So I don't need to say any more about it here. If you want to find it and you can't find it on the website, you can reach out to me and I will point you right to it. The maximum and minimum payments, maximum payment of $100,000, minimum payment of $500 applies the same next year. That hasn't changed. In terms of service provider payments, we have a number of providers that we probably mentioned in June that hadn't paid, and we're looking at revocation. The GA board did decide to move forward with revocation for 10 of those authorized providers. So they've had their SBC tokens revoked or their accounts canceled. They can rejoin the ecosystem at any time, but they need to pay any past due fees, as well as any fees that are obviously due for the next year. If you want to join, they can join. They can be revoked today and rejoin tomorrow. It should be pretty easy, but they do need to make those payments. So we have revoked the tokens of people that don't pay. So make sure you pay your bills. In terms of outreach, we did a couple of outreach events. We had Dave Fragine, who represents the NTCA on the GA Board of Directors, spoke at the Illinois Broadband and Telecom Association conference. I was told that he received a standing ovation and there were flowers thrown at his feet. It was such a wonderful presentation. And if you attended SIPNOC, you may have seen Linda Vanderloop, our STIGA board chair, and I give an impassioned update on all things STIGA. I actually think the SIPNOC presentations were made available by the SIP forum. But if you want the presentation, you can't find it, reach out to me. I'm happy to send it to you. And speaking of updates, that is the end of my Nancy updates. We can go to the next slide. And any questions anybody has, I'm happy to take.
There's one question.
Yeah, David. David has his hand up. Go, you're muted.
Got it.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon. David Kasem, CEO of Telmix here. Thank you for the update, Brent. At the last Nancy meeting, Telmix drew attention to critical matters surrounding the inadequate integration of shaken attestation data within the telephone network. As a reminder, Telmix operates an IP network through which 100% of outbound calls are signed and attested to. However, while we've seen a marked improvement since our last comment on the matter, approximately half of the inbound calls that reach our IP network still do not have shaken metadata. Our concerted efforts to address this concern within the industry, including the STIGA, have yielded limited results. And from my understanding at the last Nancy and subsequent engagement, the STIGA was not interested in further looking into this issue. And so therefore we have two questions. Is there a plan to ensure that SirShaken is actually deployed throughout the PSCN in accordance with applicable law? And would the FCC consider either issuing an additional charge letter or amending the current charge for the CATA working group to explore this issue and recommend strategies to ensure Shaken's effectiveness in combating robocalls?
So that sounds like those questions are to the FCC. Is that?
I think so,
what you
yes.
understand? Okay, so that's not a question that I can address here. So we can take that back and maybe we can address that with you offline because I'm not able to respond to that here today.
Got it. Just want to put it on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Are there any other questions for Brent?
I'm happy to take more questions for the FCC, Karen.
I'm sure, Brent. Any other questions directed directly to Brent? Okay, seeing no hands raised. Thank you, Brent. The next we'll hear a report from Deb Tucker, co-chair of the North American Portability Management LLC. Deb, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairwoman Charles, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deb Tucker. I do work for Verizon, and I share co-chair responsibilities of the NAPM LLC with Teresa Patton from AT&T. Next slide, please. So for our LMPA contract extension, under Amendment 34, the NAPM LLC has come to agreement with iConnective to extend the LMPA contract until May of 2031. Official approval is pending an FCC order, CWC docket number 23-337, and public notice DA 23-940. For statement of work and contract amendments, there are no new SOWs or contract amendments. Under NPAC activity and releases, we do have release 5.2 that will go in next year. It includes functionality for change order 561 that deals with portable NPA and XX past the effective date validation, and change order 562 to check for associated -X's when deleting a service provider, and it will include operational and usability enhancements. Deployment to Testbed 2 is scheduled for mid-January 2024, and deployment to all 7 production regions is scheduled for February 4th, 2024. The Contract Implementation Committee, also known as the KIC, had one new findings report for providers of telecommunications-related services. That's PTRS and their users that are non-service providers, and it was to validate the need for NPAC data access that was received and approved since the last Nancy meeting. Our 2023 annual continued qualification process for service providers and PTRS users is complete. And under other NAPM activities, the NAPM Security Advisory Committee, or SAC, in conjunction with iConnective, held security reviews with the FCC for all of 2022, was the annual review, and the first half of 2023. Those were concluded. And the next slide just gives you a summary of our roles and our contact information for myself and Teresa, and meeting information if anyone's interested. We've got a website at www.napamllc.org. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Seeing no hands raised, thank you, Deb, for your presentation. Next, we'll hear a report on the Numbering Administration Performance Review from Phil Lindsay, co-chair of the Numbering Administration Oversight Working Group. Phil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Charles. I appreciate it. My name again is Philip Lindsay with Lumen. I share the co-chair role with two wonderful co-chairs, Lara Walt of the Public Service Commission of the District of Columbia and Karen Rippenkroger of T-Mobile. And then we are also accompanied by some wonderful CC liaisons, Mr. Bill Anderley and Ms. Rebecca Macaroni. And I want to extend my appreciation to all of those. We work pretty well together. I can't imagine doing this without them. It's they make it truly a much more enjoyable experience. So thank you to everybody. Our area of responsibility. So the Number Administration Oversight Working Group oversees the activities of and reviews the performance of the North American Numbering Plan Administrator, the billing and collections agent, and then we have some oversight of number portability, industry forum, and the reassigned numbers database administrator. To provide a little bit of background, there's one vendor that manages the NAMPA, or the North American Numbering Plan Administrator, which is Somos. They also serve as the RNDA, or the Reassigned Numbers Database Administrator. A little bit of background on that. The North American Numbering Plan Administrator basically administers the codes, or the central office codes, as well as the 1,000 blocks that are pooled to help us efficiently manage a finite resource of the NAMP. And in that role, Somos, operates a system that allows providers to interact and obtain those numbering resources in order for them to have those resources to assign to customers. The Reassigned Numbers Database Administrator is a fairly new function as part of the contract, and that provides numbers, allows for service providers to report telephone numbers that have been permanently disconnected, and then also then would allow for then the calling party industry to query that database in order to determine whether or not that a particular number has been disconnected and potentially reassigned to a customer or an entity other than who they have authorized to call. So Somos provides that function. And then we have the billing and collections agent, which does pretty much what it says. That function is being provided by Welch LLP. The billing and collections agent provides the NAOWG with reports around the financial aspect of the cost associated with the NAMP services, as well as the R&D service. And so you'll see as we move through the presentation specifics around those efforts. And then there's the oversight of the Number Portability Industry Forum, and that is a industry forum that manages recommendations of for number portability, manages best practices, those kinds of things associated with number portability. So with that, we'll move to the next slide. The contract status of these there's two contracts. There's the NAMP and RNDA contract, and then there's a billing and collections agent. The NAMPA RNDA went effective in 2020, in December 2020, and is its current expiration is November 30th of 2025. As far as the billing and collections agent goes, that contract went to effect on May 1st of 2018, and it has been extended and runs until April 30th of 2024. Move to the next slide. So as far as the activity goes, when we have monthly meetings and we review monthly reports associated with each of the entities that we have we are managing or overseeing the contract for. The NAMPA is the first one. We review their monthly reports, and that includes that of the North American Numbering Plan, the Pooling Administration, and then the Routing Number Administration. That Routing Number Administration I failed to identify before. That's associated with like routing numbers for 911 for like mobile services or nomadic type services. So, and then we also completed all of our monthly and quarterly evaluations, and then we roll that up into an annual evaluation, which we will ultimately provide back to the Nancy in typically our June timeframe meeting. So then the Nancy will see activity around the evaluation when we get closer to June. So the NAMPA contract includes combining number administration system and pooling administration systems and the routing number administration systems. Just a little bit of background for that, since we do have new council members. I wanted to, in that historically, the NAMPA, the NAS, and the PAS and RNAS were separate systems and managed under two separate contracts. Under this last contract, it was combined based on the recommendations of the industry through predecessors of the NAOWG that would create some efficiencies if we were to combine those functions into one system. And so based on the last contract award, these systems are part of that requirement for the contract was to develop a combined system for all three of those functions. And then we also have here kind of a status of that, which is the NAMPA anticipates completion of combined NAS, or what they're calling the CNAS. Combined NAS is what I think the CNAS really refers to, and that is fourth quarter of 2024. And then I have included a link to the website for your folks' reference there. In the next slide, for the R&DA activity, pretty similar to the NAMPA activity. We do monthly reports again, and we have service provider data is expected to be uploaded by the 15th of each month. And then I provide a little bit, some of the highlights of some of those reports, and of the the August report, we've had 369 million 74,728, challenging my number recognition there. So total R&D NAMP numbers, including toll free. So those are the total numbers that are in that database right now. We have 1,110 service providers and service provider agents that are reporting into that database. And then we have over 20 million disconnected numbers reported monthly. Now, when we look at that 20 million disconnected numbers reported monthly, that's a trend. And some of those numbers may already exist in the database and may be just updates to some numbers that may already exist in that database. So just kind of put it into context there. So we completed the R&DA monthly quarterly evaluation, similar to what we did with a NAMP. And again, that will be an evaluation that you will see in the June timeframe as well. And then I've provided with the R&D websites, both for the R&DA as well as the SEC's reference to it on their website. On the next slide. For the billing and collections agent, that's pretty straightforward. We review those monthly deliverables, NAMP financials, R&D financials, and then completed their monthly and quarterly evaluation as well. So, and all of those monthly deliverables are associated with like response to emails or questions around service providers receiving bills associated with the bills that are sent out by the by Welch. Another thing that folks need to be aware of is there's an annual contribution factor that's developed associated with this, which again we will see that more detail on that coming up in next June's meeting. We'll that is also calculated based on provider revenues and both the R&D or it's only the NAMP contract that applies to. The R&D contract has already been fulfilled as far as the development of the system, and that the R&D system is it's supported by those users that query it. So the cost of the provider or the customers that are querying the database to get data are the ones that would be making that, I guess, financially solvent, if you will. So the service providers initially provided funding in order to develop that system, but the ongoing support of that will be based on the query, the customers that will be querying that database. So, and then so with that, and I also have the NAMP Fund website for Welch that Welch maintains. So if you want more information there, you can take a look at that as well. So the next slide we have is the Number Portability Industry Forum. Again, the NPIF continues to meet on a monthly basis with a focus on general LNP issues, including XML interface improvements, porting throughput increases, the LSMS capacity planning, best practice updates, and change order reviews. So there's like the LSMS is really, for folks that don't know, it's a local service management system, and it basically takes copies of the portability database, the MPAC, and it allows for queries. So when phone calls are made, queries can be made in order to identify the true location of the destination location. So with that, the examples of active issues currently being worked, we have best practice 73 related to unauthorized porting and process procedures, Number Portability Administration Center to Local Service Migration System, LSMS, and that should be my management system, but that's okay. And Service Order Administration, or SOA potential performance and throughput enhancements. Potential updates to enhancements to the MPAC and NAMPA reporting processes, procedures related to code and or block reclamation. With that, that's the chairs are Deb Tucker of Verizon and Teresa Patton of AT&T. I have their emails are there identified here if you need to contact them, or if you need a phone contact information, you can give me a call or contact me and be happy to provide that to you. The NPIF website, I provide that email or that website address here as well. So the next page, which is, these are our membership. This is our membership. I want to extend, my gratitude to all the members of the NEOWG. We are a well-working group. Even though we are a very large group, we work well and we accomplish, you know, a tremendous amount of work as it comes at us. So I want to extend my thanks to everybody. With that, future meetings, we have since had the October meeting, our upcoming meeting in November, and then we have our final meeting on the 14th of December, and then we have our calendar here for 2024. So with that, and then I've got our email addresses for myself and Lara Walt and Karen Rippin-Kruger as well. So with that, if there are any questions.
Bill, I'm not seeing any questions. Christy, are
Sorry.
you?
I'm sorry, I'm here. I have a
Oh, okay.
question.
Perfect.
David Kaysen
Yeah.
from Telmex Gun. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate all the work that you do. Just wanted to emphasize our remarks regarding the FCC Somos contract and the integration of the combined NAS paths. And so, while Somos has recently shared API documents, we, at least personally, remain apprehensive that the new system will not be available until Q4 of 24. Telmex is dependent on the combined NAS paths to introduce additional efficiencies and automation. That will be a significant cost savings to our business, and I'm sure likely the businesses of others on the Nancy. As a small provider, every cost savings innovation is crucial to continued success of our business. And in light of this prolonged timeline, would it be possible for the NAOWG to explore potential compensatory measures for carriers affected by the extended duration of this project? And at the very least, ensure there's a plan for an open bid process for when the contract comes up for renewal in 2025. And then lastly, ensure that preventing further delays is a factor in the decision to whom to award the contract.
So are you intending that question to go to Phil on behalf of the NAOWG, or is that one
Yes.
also to the FCC?
That one's to the NAOWG.
So thanks, David. Appreciate your question. I think there's two parts to that question. One is there a way that we can expedite implementation of the new NAS? And then there was another one that I don't know if I caught.
Just ensure that there's going to be an open bid process for when the contract comes
open
up.
bidding process. Okay. So on the first one around expediting, we're hopeful that that Somos can deliver the NAS or the combined system sooner. It's my understanding that the 2024 date is the longest that it would take in order to get that system completed. I'm very much at the mercy of what is the processes of Somos to enable a sooner date than the 2024, but we have a regular readout on their status, and there are often questions regarding how those mile markers can be brought in versus extended. So, and as far as the open bid process, it's my understanding that is a statutory requirement for the FCC, and that's part of the FCC's contract management office. And I don't know, Christy, if I've got that right or not, or you can set me straight on that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not involved in the contract process. But David, if you have questions for the staff about the contract process, you can get in touch with me, and then I'll try to, get you to the right people who can answer questions about that. But we can't answer those here.
Thank you.
Okay,
Rosemary?
First of all, David, are you finished? Okay.
I am.
Rosemary, go ahead.
Hi, Rosemary Lice with T-Mobile. I just want to support all of the comments that David Telmex just stated for the record. This is taking entirely too long. And I just feel like are kind of walking in the blind spot at this point. It just keeps coming up over and over again. And I appreciate all the work the NAOWG, of course, always does with everything, but especially trying to keep on top of this particular issue. And I do think also that we need to be looking as the FCC and as the industry at, you know, a very transparent process for the next contract. Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like that was the last hand up.
Okay, thank you, Phil. We will now move on to public participation. Do we have any comments from members of the public in the room?
Sorry,
Christy,
I
go
think
ahead.
that's left over from the last meeting where we were live.
Okay.
So
We
let's move
also
on to
enabled-
questions in the docket.
Okay. We also enable public participation through comments filed in the docket and through a dedicated email address, livequestions@fcc.gov. First, we'll turn to the comments filed in the docket. A public notice for this meeting released on August 14th, 2023, asked members of the public to file any comments in the Commission's electronic comment filing system in WC docket number 23-1. Do we have any comments from members of the public?
Not.
Are there any public comments or questions received through the livequestions.gov email address?
No, we do not have any questions through the live questions inbox.
Thank you. And lastly, do any Nancy members have other business they wish to address?
I don't, Ola Oyafusi from AT&T.
Yes, this is Ola Oyefusi from AT&T. Just want to announce that this probably will be my last Nancy meeting. I'm retiring from AT&T as of December 2nd. I believe Angela DeMay has been nominated and she's going through the nomination process, so she will be the next AT&T rep taking this role from, I think next meeting is February.
March 1st will be the next meeting. Yeah, well, Ola, congratulations on your retirement, and we wish you the best, and we thank you for all of your service to the Nancy. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Hola, this is Karen. I'd like to ditto everything Christy just said. Congratulations on your retirement. That is fantastic news. It's a loss for AT&T, but we're very, very happy for you, and we will miss you here on the Nancy. So good luck.
Well,
Christy,
it's been a good experience, and thanks for everybody. Everybody that I worked with, a lot of people that I had very good relationship with on the Nancy, and sometimes off the Nancy through other means. But it's been a good ride.
Thank
Wonderful.
you. Thank you for letting us know. David, did you have something else? It looked like your hand popped up and then went away.
No, that was an accident. Sorry.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? Okay. Go ahead.
Christy, anything from the commission you'd like to add?
Yeah, thank you. So just a couple of things. One, apologies to you all who had technical difficulties today. We will take that back and try to figure out why there was a problem with the slides for some of you, but not others, and see if we can sort that out for next time so we don't have those issues going forward. To the extent that you look back at the slides, for those of you who did have technical difficulties, if you look back at the slides or rewatch the video or anything, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions, and we'll try to help coordinate responses for you for anything you'd like to follow up on, since you didn't have full access to the presentation during this meeting. And like I said, we'll try to sort that out, figure out what the technical difficulty was, so we can try to preemptively avoid it next time. The other announcement is that the next meeting of the Nancy will be March 1st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be back in a hybrid format with in-person attendance at the FCC headquarters. We will have a virtual option for members on Teams. As always, the public will be able to view the meeting on the Commission's live events webpage. Thanks to everyone, especially our presenters, for your participation in today's meeting. And we look forward to seeing you in March. And that's it.
Thank you, Christy. Vice Chairwoman Alexander White, anything you'd like to add before we adjourn this afternoon?
It was a wonderful meeting. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget. If there's nothing else, thank you all for your time this afternoon. This meeting is adjourned.
Goodbye.
Thank